Hey, beautiful souls. We are in for a real treat. I am so excited to introduce you Alison Canavan. She is an international speaker, a wellness coach, and a mindfulness advocate, inspiring audience worldwide. Her powerful message about energy management, personal growth, well-being. She was a former international model, and so she got to really walk on the most prominent runways and magazines, and through this journey actually ended up finding herself and what actually started to really light her up. And so, she's leaned into being a meditation practitioner for the last 25 years. She was named one of the top 8 transformational coaches in the US by USA Today. She's an award-winning author, Alison. The list goes on. And I cannot wait to dig in with you today because there's so much beauty and overlap that I'm excited to cover. So those that are tuning in, I just cannot wait for you to experience her medicine and her magic. So Alison, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you for that very generous introduction, Christina.
Of course.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, truly. I can't wait to dig in. So, what was fascinating for me as I was really starting to get to know you was this journey from, an international model to now you're teaching, mindfulness, meditation, self-care. What did that journey look like from where you started to now where you're at? What was kind of that catalyst, that in between that brought you into this new, evolved version of self?
Yeah, it was, I think since I've been a little girl, I've always been a spiritual soul seeker. I always asked really deep questions of the universe and spent a lot of time in contemplation and asking questions about God and, why are we here and what's our purpose? And then, of course, I end up in an industry like the fashion industry, which is completely the opposite to any of that, of course.
Yeah.
And throughout my life, I have always felt like I didn't belong. It's really interesting because there's, on one hand, I felt like I feel like I can fit in with anybody, almost like a chameleon. Like when I go into any group, I can go in and I can connect and I can talk. But then at the same time, I don't really feel like I belong, and I don't know if that makes sense. And
that's me exactly. So I'm driving me to a T.
Yeah. And so I can speak to anybody, I can connect with anybody, but then I just don't feel like I belong. Mm-hmm. And when I was modeling, I started modeling really young. I was not like the little girl that grew up looking at magazines thinking, gosh, I would absolutely love to be a model. I don't even think I came across models before I became one. Mm-hmm. And I was a tomboy growing up. I used to wear my jeans, my NB runners when I was young, my Adidas tracksuits and t-shirts, I was definitely a tomboy. So I wasn't that traditional girl who loved to play with makeup either. And to be honest with you, still to this day, it takes me about 10 minutes to get ready. And I really don't like spending hours in the bathroom. So
yeah,
when I started modeling at 15, I believe our paths are predestined. And it was just something I fell into accidentally. I remember I was representing Ireland in the Ford Supermodel of the World competition. And for the final of that in Ireland, I arrived in my school uniform. I had just done my leaving cert that day and I won. And I was like, what does this mean? And it's like, you're going to Las Vegas to represent Ireland. And then from there, I ended up going straight to Paris with Ford models to work. And so it kind of all happened very fast for me.
Yeah.
And I had a low sense of self-worth, as most girls do, actually, I realize. And I had always kind of been very melancholy. Like my sister that I'm closest to would say, there was always a bit of sadness about you, which actually makes me really sad for my little girl, and there's kind of part of me that actually didn't really want to be here. Mm-hmm. And so I always say, when you enter an industry like the fashion industry and you're in any way lost, the risk is that you get lost even further. And so I wouldn't say at all that it's because of the fashion industry that I ended up with deeper mental health issues or addictions. I think it was just a very easy access path for me, from a young girl. Parties are free and easy at Fashion Week. Everybody's drinking backstage, and smoking from a very early age. There's zero judgment about any of that. It's totally the other extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, started drinking very heavily at a very young age. It was the one thing that gave me great relief. Great relief. Oh, even now, I'm in recovery a decade. And even now, when I think of having my glass of wine, I go, oh,
Yeah.
I can breathe.
Yeah.
Just that like intensity. It takes the edge off. And, what once became a support structure became a need and then became a problem. And I remember I've been medicated for depression and anxiety from a very young age, and the messaging I got was, I remember a doctor said to me, you're just anxious and depressed. It's just who you are. And you will always be that way. And of course, I took that story on. I'm an anxious and depressed person. I mean, I took it on with great shame. Like I didn't want anybody to know. So my inner fight began like, I can't let people see who I really am. I can't let people know that I'm this anxious and depressed person. Just, that's who I am. So I have to do everything in my power. And so I was like party alley. When was I partying? I was so much fun. Everyone wanted me at their parties. I was the best person to bring to Ibiza,
Right,
I was the one who was going to be the last person leaving the party. Like those years, there were so many of those years that were absolutely amazing. Like I won't say they weren't because there was so much fun had. But I was trying to run from myself because I was so ashamed of this part of myself. And what I learned over time was that you can't run from yourself because you're always with yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to Miami for 2 months or New York or London or Paris and get rid of my problems. And that was a big aha moment for me. So I have always been into meditation. I started meditating when there was no meditation apps, no books on meditation. And the only way to access it during that time, and it's, when I was 17, 18, I'm 46. So it was a long time ago, was through the Buddhist centers that I came across. So the Buddhist center in London. And then when I lived in New York, I used to go to the Kadampa Buddhist Center. There was a beautiful teacher in there called Kadam Morton, and he's still teaching, actually. I just visited him recently. And I remember looking at the course, and my Irish friend, actually, Aidan, who used to live opposite me in New York, took me. And he was big into metaphysics. And you went into his house and he had all these books. And I was like, whoa,
Yes.
So cool.
Yes.
I remember sitting in those classes, though, feeling very out of place. But this teacher used to teach about, you are not your thoughts. And understanding the mind. And I thought, wow, I've landed in the right place because my thoughts were a nightmare. And I was constantly making up stories and a chronic ruminator, and everything was worst case scenario, everything. So I thought, oh my gosh, they teach about this stuff. Wow.
Yes, saving grace right there.
Yeah. And so I remember it was my first introduction to understanding the concept of love. And he used to teach in a really beautiful way. He used to teach from the perspective of living in New York City, which was super helpful, missing the subway or there being loads of people around and where you go to and what happens inside of you. And that started to open up a part of me I didn't even know existed. And so there was 2 lives going on. There was the party alley in the fashion industry, living the high life in New York. And then there was the other side of me that was desperate to try and figure this out. And knowing, I always knew I took things too far. Always. I always knew I drank more than everyone else. I always knew I had no off switch. I always knew that I went too far, that I'd be the last person standing at 6 a.m. in the morning and wouldn't want to go home. I knew that. I knew that actually from when I was 16 years of age, if not younger. I knew that even when the first time we drank and everybody took a couple of sips of the alcohol, I drank the whole thing. So I was well aware that there was an issue from the very get-go of trying substances. But I was addicted to escaping, and I would have done anything to escape. I was so addicted to escaping. And I remember I used to go on these silent retreats. So it was like these extremes, and I would go and sit in these silent retreats, and I would love them. And I'd be soaking in the knowledge, the wisdom. It would be like a part of me could remember. And then I was just really ill-equipped to go back to the real world. So I would be able to sustain it for a couple of days at most. And then somebody would invite me out and I would be back into this cyclical partying and anxiety and waking up and everything. And that continued for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a decade in the rooms of AA trying to get sober. Didn't work, for many reasons. I probably just wasn't ready. It just wasn't my time. I always say you can't get sober for anybody else. It has to be for you, and you have to be ready. Something shifts, something seismic shifts inside of you. And it looks different for everybody. And I had broken up with my son's father, and I was pregnant, which I found out after we broke up. And I decided to stay in Ireland because that's where my family were. And I was like, I'm going to stay in Ireland. It's where my family are. I'm going to have loads of support, which was an interesting journey for 9 years, a very, very interesting, deep spiritual journey of meeting the darkest parts of myself. But also that's where I got sober, in the most difficult place in the world, a country that literally canonizes alcohol and celebrates alcohol for everything. And it was the loneliest journey of my life, getting sober in Ireland. And I don't regret a bit of it. I wouldn't change 1 second of what I went through.
It's so powerful. Like just that journey when you think about those spiritual awakenings. Because I had a similar, my journey in, I feel like college was kind of that escapism where it was like, let's party, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, fun day, and it was like, I just kept, and it was like a similar experience in the sense that it was like, I was ruminating in my thoughts. And it was kind of like the thing that made me no longer think about stuff that I was thinking about, and almost like let my true self come out, like the one that wanted to dance and the one that wanted to sing and the one that was just like wanted to, crack jokes and not overthink them. And so it was a really interesting journey to then, having a big spiritual awakening where I experienced, having to put my dog down. That was kind of my big spiritual awakening. Little things were happening, but it was like the death of someone you're super close to, right? She slept in my bed. She slept on my chest, like felt like my baby died. And I just remember the catalyst of being like, there's got to be something more to this life. And I'm going to figure out what that is. And so you're right, like that big catalyst that's kind of like, it's almost like the choice point where I'm like, okay, I feel like there's got to be something more. And then that beautiful discovery path of just following what lights you up, following what makes you curious, following even when, and especially when no one else is doing it, choose it anyways. Like I always talk about like purpose, like in the sense of, when no one else around you gets it, that's how you know it's absolutely yours, because it's like, we're not dads, it's not moms, it's not sisters, and so it's like continue to follow those little intuitive nudges. And so I'm curious, as you started to get sober, as you started to lean into meditation, do you feel like that kind of turned your intuition on, like your spiritual gifts? Like share with us more about that journey.
Yeah, I have always had very strong intuition, like very in tune, very spiritual, mystical, saw things when I was younger, deeply connected to spirit. Like some of the stuff that just really terrified me. My grandmother, I'd see her sitting at the side of my bed when I was younger. And of course, my family had the priest come and do exercising and, so trying to cut me off from that, which I now know is a superpower and a gift. And we all have it, by the way. It's not like the chosen one. Like everybody has it. Everybody has that ability because we're spiritual beings. But it's interesting, like when I was back in Ireland, I had been meditating for so long. And one of the things, I had a very stressful pregnancy because James's father's not in our life. And so my commitment to myself was that I was going to meditate every single day, eat healthy. I've never been healthier than I was during my pregnancy. Like I really took care of myself because I knew it wasn't about me. It was so interesting. I never, ever wanted to take care of myself because I never had an interest. I never cared about myself enough. That's the truth. But when I had this baby inside me growing, it was so easy to take care of myself because it wasn't about me. And that was such a huge moment for me. So easy to show up, so easy to, and then after I had my baby, I felt like I had something to prove because I used to get smart comments and, oh, you've fallen from grace. And, people can be quite nasty at times. And, God, you lived in New York, you were a very successful model, and now you're living with your mom, God, so all of these things were said to me all the time. And then we had the beautiful social media that gave people free will to say whatever they wanted.
Yeah. Yay.
And, ladies stopping me on the street in Dublin and saying stuff to me and say, God, your mum must be so disappointed. You had such a great career. And I used to think to myself, wow, now I know I'm a mirror.
Yes.
So all I was doing was mirroring my own thoughts back to me via other people. So I'm much further along on my spiritual path now. So I kind of laugh at it now and go,
yes,
all those people were me. I was speaking to me through other people.
Yes, right.
And so I was literally mirroring back my own shame, my own guilt, all the stuff that was happening inside of me. But I wasn't there at that stage. That was not where I was. Yeah. I was kind of having little mini spiritual awakenings, like bursts of spirit. So I started like teaching meditation online when no one was teaching meditation. First when we got videos. And then in Ireland, I put together these big shows and people used to say to me, nobody's going to come because I was bringing sound healing in. This is like well over a decade ago. Yeah. And I was bringing people for full day events. And, I just kept thinking, I know this seems woo woo to a lot of people and a little bit crazy. And I was bringing Kundalini yoga in, but I know it's what people are looking for. Like on some level, I just had this knowing.
Yes.
And so I always felt like I was a little bit ahead of my time, which actually made my path a little bit more difficult because I was bringing something into the public forum, especially in Ireland, that people were afraid of, quite frankly.
Totally. Yeah.
Really afraid of. And that was a really fascinating journey. And then one night when I could not drink for months, but every time I put alcohol near my mouth, there was no off switch. And that was just the way it was. And I remember one night I went out and I cannot remember getting home. My front door was open. I was in my clothes. I woke up, the usual, like looking at my phone going, please God, someone text me and let me know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. Those moments are terrifying. And so my mom had my son. I remember she came around and she looked at me and she just walked off. And I went, oh, and she goes, I will bring James back later. And I was it's like the level of shame in I felt dirty. I felt disgusting. I was like, you're the worst mom in the world. You're such a loser. Here you go again. You cannot go out. You're not in control of this. Get it together. And this man on Facebook messaged me. And he said, I found you outside a nightclub last night. And I managed to get your address out of you and I dropped you home and I hope you're okay. Now, if that's not by the grace of God, and let me tell you, really dark stuff happened to me during my career, like dark. So when people say, oh my God, I'm like, oh no, this was not my worst moment and it was not my lowest point. Let me make that crystal clear. However, it was a big catalyst because I was like, shit, if anything happened to me, my son has no one. No one. Yeah. And I tell myself all the stories in the world, which are, you don't drink during the day, you don't drink this, you only go out and party like this when your mom has them. So you're so responsible. Like the amount of that we tell ourselves and the amount of risk that I was putting myself in because I was telling myself all these stories. Right. Just because I get wasted, but I'm getting wasted responsibly. Right. Somebody has my author nonsense. And I was like, this is high risk. You are blacking out every time you drink. Every time. You don't remember anything. You don't know who you're with. And I got on my knees that day and I just prayed sincerely with every fiber of my being and was like, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
And if you help get me sober, I will serve every single day. I did not know what that meant. I did not know what that looked like. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. But I never wanted to drink again. Like when people say, have you ever experienced a miracle? I'm like, let me tell you that I had given up the whole idea of being able to get sober. I was in NA and AA for years. I had overdosed, and then I would tell myself story or the people I was drugging with, which was hilarious. They would demonstrate to me that I just got some bad Coke. What? You just got some stuff that was bad. And you just got unlucky. And I would be like, yeah, you're right. You're right. I often think I'm going to write a book of stupid things I used to say during my life.
All right.
Really,
Can I have a chapter in that one?
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
perfect.
and I was just there going, wow. And so this moment, something shifted that
Yeah.
moment, something shifted. And I take that commitment to God real serious. Like every morning, my prayer is, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom? From A Course in Miracles. And I'm like, guide me. Every morning is thank you, because I do feel blessed. Like I work with people in recovery and I know so many people who didn't make it, so many girls I modeled with who quote unquote weren't as bad as me, all the stories we tell, and they just didn't make it. And so I do not take the recovery part of it for granted, because I do believe that some kind of miracle happened. And also I wanted it. Like I was so sick of feeling that way, of disappointing myself and others, and just being in these risky situations. And I couldn't shake this feeling of dirtiness. Like there's no other way to describe it. Waking up so hungover, like having drank for 12 hours and then feeling like a piece of dirt and just feeling dirty all day and guilty. And I was done. I was like, this is not the life I want to live. I don't want to live this way anymore. I'm sick of this. And I think sometimes we have to get to that stage. It has to get to that stage. For some of us, I mean, I would encourage people not to let it get to that stage.
Right. If we don't need to, let's maybe not. Yeah. But I know.
But that was huge for me. And I can tell you, since that day, the acceleration on my spiritual path was huge. I had a massive spiritual awakening, probably 2018, like a huge spiritual awakening. And that was terrifying for anyone who's been through a really big spiritual awakening, because it's like your whole world just gets wide open and turned upside down. So it was like little mini spiritual awakenings, and then a big bomb of a spiritual awakening. And now we're more into the integration phase.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. Tell us more about that spiritual awakening. Because I feel like people who are tuning in are probably, what was that like? Can you describe it? Like, because I think people sometimes are going through it and they don't know that that's what they're experiencing. Share with us more about that.
It's terrifying. It's like, one day you wake, it's like people, like I say to people, it's terrifying. I had a friend who recently she reached out. We haven't spoken in a very long time. And she reached out and she's like, I don't know what's happening to me. And she was just, as she was talking and describing her experience, I'm like, oh, you're in the middle of a spiritual awakening. Okay, this is the first thing I'm going to say. You call me and speak to me before you blow your life up every time. Because like there's so many, when you're going through a spiritual awakening, you can definitely just blow your life up all over the place. Like, with, if you're married or in relationships or whatever, like there's a lot of things that you can do. And I do believe that if you understand what you're moving through, that you can, like, as I said to a couple of friends of mine, this will integrate. You will understand this. This is part of the path of initiation, but it is terrifying. And it's like one day everything's okay. And the next day, everything you thought was good is bad and up was down. And the whole world just seems like it's inside out. And you go through this phase of not being able to understand everything. And I believe that our third eye opens in a dramatic way, and there's so much information coming at us, and we can't understand it or control it. That's one way I feel after meditating on this for many years. I'm like, why is the awakening so difficult? And I do believe it's like we have this massive kundalini, we have this awakening, our chakras open, and we get more access to the spirit world and more access to consciousness. And all of a sudden we're like seeing things and hearing things, and everything's just more vivid, and it's too much for us. And that's why grounding, if you're in the awakening, the crazy awakening, grounding, coming home to yourself, connecting with nature, journaling, all of those, and working with somebody. Like I do believe, like I was very blessed that I woke up with my best friend. So thank God, because I think both of us would have gone certifiably insane had we not had each other during that.
Totally. Yeah.
And, it's, when I work with people, it looks different for everybody, but it is this kind of shock factor of we see the world through a totally different lens. And some of that can be very difficult for us to be with and to understand. And, we can become scared, really scared and very fearful. Like a lot of the world can become a really scary place for us. You know, we start to see all of these really dark things that are happening in the world, and we start to have this doom gloom experience for a while. That was a very real part. And falling down all these crazy rabbit holes of research, like crazy rabbit holes. Like, I mean, like one thing would open up and I'd be down this rabbit hole and just,
yeah.
You know, I understand it so differently now because I also understand I'm the creator and everything is part of the mind that's creating it, which is mine. And I mean, it's different because I've been moving through it for so many years. But I would definitely say to somebody who feels like any of what I said is resonating, you will move through this. Mm-hmm. It will integrate, it settles, and you do find peace. Like, that's the one thing I would say. But I was thinking about this a while ago, and I was like, gosh, I wonder, and this is where my mind goes after having a massive awakening. Yeah. Like, I wonder if a lot of the people years ago who were put into mental institutions were just having a spontaneous awakening and weren't able to calibrate, right? Everything that was going on in their reality. And so what do we do with people when we don't understand them? When they don't understand themselves, we medicate them. It's their go-to. I don't understand you. You're not fitting in. You're not like complying. You're not doing what you're told. You're not seeing things the way you should see them. So we need to medicate you. You know, and that's kind of how I see the world is we're not all the same. We're not all meant to be the same. We're not here to walk the same path. Each and every one of us is so different. And you know, maybe the path is in understanding that this is something we chose before we got here. For some people, that's how I see it. I do believe that we chose it before we got here. That's what I believe deja vus are. Us remembering part of our plan.
Cool.
Like a moment where we're like, oh, this is what I planned before. I remember this, right? I remember it because I planned it.
Yeah.
And so I have it very different. Like, I'm still deep in doing the work, you know, in doing my best to recognize the ego. And, you know, my question every day is this love or is this fear? And that's my dominant question now as I move through my life. And I think the most important part for anyone moving through a spiritual awakening is self-compassion. Don't make any big decisions. Just take your time. There's no rush to have it all figured out. You know, there's lots of people out there who are going through similar experiences that can help. So seek out somebody that can support you and help you and let you know that you're not mad. That's the biggest thing that was for me and my friend was we thought we were mad.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not mad.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so many beautiful points as you were speaking. And I just really want to, like, for anyone who's tuning in, that's like, oh, like I'm going through the spiritual awakening. It does feel like a lot. Exactly as Alison was just saying, I think the idea of finding a guide, finding someone who can help you navigate. I mean, that was a game changer for me. Like every single, like I had one-on-one coaches and I had healers and I had people who could just help me make sense of it. I was talking to psychics, you know, just people who I was like, it feels a little bit like it's like the world, like you were saying, is flipped upside down. Help me understand what's happening now, because the world as I knew it was different to what it is now. And I really expected everyone else to come with me. I was like, you guys though, like look how amazing it is. Like, it's like the both and where it's like, and then like, wow, you know? And so I was like, you guys, you have to come up here, you know? And some people were like, you're crazy. Absolutely not. And then some people would like dip a toe in, you know, and it was like, or what I really found I had to do was seek out people that were already there. Like that seemed to be the easiest path because I would pull people up and they're like, I don't understand you anymore. And I'm like, I don't understand me anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so like just seeking out those mentors that were like, I've been through this before. Let me help you heal what's moving through you. You know, let me help you ground. To your point, the grounding so important. So for someone who's tuning in, that's like, cool, what is that? Like getting your bare feet on the earth is one way to ground, you know, like just really being in nature, letting yourself kind of immerse in Mother Earth, even connecting a cord to your root chakra, which is your sit. Have it beam all the way down, visualize it all the way down into the crystalline core of the new earth, or just the earth, just connect to it, bring up that grounding energy. These are just some ways of just starting to really ground back into your body where you're like, what the actual F just happened?
Yeah, so much, because as you're talking, I'm just having this remembrance, and I'm like, that phase, by the way, which everyone goes through, of, wanting to people to see it your way. It's like, no. Like, you're just desperately trying to take people with you. And it's
like, come on. They're like, no.
I realized this I remember I used to go to cafes. I must have seemed like I was insane. And I go to cafes and I'd be like showing people the evidence and the proof and waiting to the and oh my God, I found out about this. And do you know what these people do? And oh my God, they're poisoning our food and they're killing us.
Right.
And this is all happening. And I'm like,
what's your order? What coffee do you want? Like, whoa. Yes. I know. Because you can't unsee it once you see it, and you want everyone to see it. But to your point, it's like, we wake up at different times, and you have to be okay with that. And just, that was a big learning lesson for me too, is like, let it be okay that some people aren't there yet. Like, we're going to wake up at different times, but seek out people that are further along in their journey, because that helps you make sense of it. And then the people that are meant to stay in your life will just keep embodying who you are, ground into your body, continue to follow what lights you up. And then the people that are meant to stay with you will, the people that maybe it's not in alignment with at this time, they'll fall away. And that part is difficult for sure. That was one of the hardest parts.
So hard.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like,
when I look back, I woke up, one of my sisters is awake now and none of the rest are, and I don't have a relationship with them. And it was such a heartbreaking time for me, because I know my family thought I was insane. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like the odd one out anyway in my family. I always felt like I was different. And like, from a really young girl, I had this desperate yearning for them to see me for who I was and love me. And so that became this chronic people pleaser, like crazy. Like, I would say when I go to one of my sister's house, I'm not going to go in and overly explain or justify or whatever. And one of my sister's husbands used to make jokes about the work I did. Like, is that a real profession? Or it's not a doctor, it's not a psychiatrist. Like, what is it you do? Like, joking about what I do. But because I was so insecure, I used to take it really personally and try to prove myself. And so I was always have a chat to myself before I went into their house and say, oh, don't go in and overcompensate. And the next thing I'd hear myself going, do you know that I was invited to do this? And I got a book deal and I'm doing this event in a couple of weeks. Really what my little girl was doing was, see me, love me. Like, look, I'm doing good stuff. Will you love me? And I found that I was surrounded, and this is why I chose them as my family in this incarnation. Yes. Because they are my greatest teachers, and they were the greatest catalysts for my personal growth, because they didn't see me. Mm-hmm. I didn't receive the love that I desired deep in my heart, and so I was always trying to please these people who were never going to understand me, and so don't. And that's okay. And I think part of the spiritual path, when we have these powerful teachers, especially in our family, I just am at such a different level now where I'm like, wow, I chose them. And without them, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing in this world. I wouldn't. Like, if I had had this ultra supportive, amazing, loving, gorgeous family, I would be doing what I'm doing. Yeah. I would be on a very different path. So I do see that every character in our play, because we're writing it, directing it, producing it, we're everything, plays a very important part. Yeah. And I was able to, it's still a work in progress for me, and forgiveness, my relationship with forgiveness. Like I always say, we're in a world that's forgiving. So to activate the law of receiving, we're here to serve. So that's to be in service, to give. And so I love words. And if we look at forgiving, it's a very interesting word. We are here to forgive one perception over for another. So I, through A Course in Miracles, I have been able to understand forgiveness, because growing up in Ireland, forgiveness was always like, just let it go now. Just push it under the carpet, and don't say anything when they come in. Or my mom would say, now when they come in here, don't start. What does that teach us? Just to let people away with stuff, and then, forgive them now. Sure, they're family. They're family. Blood is thicker than water. Just let it go.
Mhm.
And I think that's so toxic and so unhealthy, because what real forgiveness is not actually condoning or letting it go, but
Right.
understanding it from their perspective. That's
Mm.
different. It's
Yes.
very, very different. It's like, you know, if I was in their shoes and
Mhm.
I had walked their path and
Mhm.
I had had the experiences that they've had, could I potentially have made the same decisions they have?
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, it makes sense. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're saying what they've done is okay
Mhm.
or that you condone it in any shape or form. But it does get you to the place of being able to forgive one perception over for another. And
Yeah.
for me, that's what has helped me access incredible peace
Yes.
within, like incredible peace within. And let me tell you, for people, like, I've been abused, I've been raped.
Mm.
Like, so when I talk about this, often people come at me and say, oh, well, you don't understand what it's like for this to happen, and you don't understand. And I get that response, because it's the normal response when we're like, you don't understand what I've been through. And I say, oh, trust me when I say I've had some really hard stuff to work through,
Mhm.
to some really hard stuff to make sense of.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if I don't work through that, the only person it's poisoning is me
So
and
true.
my son and my life.
Yeah.
And it is actually so liberating and humbling
Mhm.
to be able to forgive somebody. I get so emotional even now. When I get emotional, it's more like, I always feel like it's more like the energy of love running through me so deeply that it's like,
Yeah.
you know, to be able to forgive someone who's really hurt you is,
Mhm. Mm.
it's incredible. And then I know I've hurt people.
Yeah.
I've been that person too.
Mhm.
I have been that person who has, I drank and drove for 20 years. Trust me, I hurt people. you
Mhm.
know, I have I have been that person, and none of us are walking this path perfectly. And
Mhm.
so when I catch myself judging, I'm just like, really now? Really now? You haven't said something like that. You haven't done something like that. Come on. you
Mhm.
know People are doing, I do think, as we move through this journey and going through our spiritual awakening and various aspects of, like, do what you can from where you are with what you have in the moment, because that's all you can do,
Mhm.
right? And it takes the pressure off a little
Yes.
bit. It's
And
just not so much pressure to have it all figured out today.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and we won't have it all figured out until we're on the other side.
Yeah.
I always think I'm like, we are this like perfect masterpiece exactly as we are with the unfinished edges. Like we're still painting. Like we're not meant to know what the entire tapestry looks like until the very end. And then once we're on the other side, deep appreciation, but appreciate it now. It's like we're a masterpiece now.
Mm.
Like don't expect the finished piece. Like keep painting, keep going, keep adding. And to your point about forgiveness, I always think about us knowing we're souls that drop into this body, and we're here to learn forgiveness. We're here to learn love. We're here to learn all these different things. And so I always like the way that I like start to think about forgiveness for me, and what always helps me and my clients too is I it's like we're on the other side and we're talking to someone, right? And we're like, I need to learn forgiveness. And the other spirit's like, I'll do something really unforgivable, right? And then you can just learn forgiveness. And we high five and we drop into our bodies. And then we're like, what the F was that about? And then we have to learn forgiveness. So it's like, it's a
I
constant.
freaking love that. I'm like, oh, that's so good. Just let's have a
Yeah.
pause for that, because that is so good. I
Yeah.
was just drinking in your medicine of the masterpiece and seeing my painting. And then, like, to bring that lightness and joy of, we're having this chat and it's like, I want to learn forgiveness. And it's like, awesome, I'll play this part.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think about, I'm just like, God bless the people that are playing such a low
Difficult
vibrational
role.
part right now. Like the bravery to choose into that. Like I actually channeled that information too. I'm like, wow, I'm seeing people so differently through this lens of like the bravery to say, I'm going to choose a really low vibrational experience this time around so that everyone around me can learn forgiveness. It's like to be in that, honestly, hell on earth in that body for however long they're here. Like, God bless them for that, and
Oh,
just Send them light and love.
I mean, anyone listening, drink in that medicine, because that shift alone will transform your life.
Mhm.
Like, I am so happy we're speaking today, because I'm
Yeah.
like listening to you right now. I felt this seismic shift within me,
Mm.
like just seismic shift within me. So thank you. Cause it's like, yeah. And then we can generate and see those people through a totally different lens and take the charge out of it. And
Yes.
that's how we help each other return to love. That's how we return to love,
Yes.
not through anger and bitterness and name calling and resentment, through this gorgeous understanding.
Mhm.
It's all happening for us. And
Yes.
if we look outside right now, it's a little bit shitty. Like, I mean, to think that, it's like, oh God, I really don't want to be here. But then on the other hand, I always feel when I sit in silence and I really tune in, I just constantly keep getting the message. This is the most incredible time to be alive.
Mhm.
This is the most incredible time to be a human being, because we are shifting consciousness at an accelerated rate that might feel very slow right now. I get it.
Mhm.
But
Right.
there is there are more and more and more people waking up. There are
Mhm.
more and more people returning to love. Like, it is happening. But for it to happen, we do need the contrast. We do. We're in it. We're in this third dimensional body, and this is how we learn.
Mm. So true. So true. And I always think about, like, if my soul is still in this body, it's got a purpose for being here,
Mm.
right? It still has that purpose for being here. So you think about the people that have actually tried to take their life and it didn't work. They're
Yes.
still here for a very specific purpose and reason. And so for the person that might be thinking, it's too late for me to pivot, it's too
Mm.
late. What would you say to that person?
But first of all, it's never too late. Like, never. And I say that all the time. I have a woman who's starting to work with me who's in her early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me when we started to work together, why? She goes, I'm really frustrated that like, I'm only coming to this work now. And I was like, every single moment of your life until now has been preparing you for the work.
Mm.
So we have this connection to age because we're living in the 3D, but your spirit, your soul is ageless. It's timeless. There is no age. So age is just a construct that we have. Like, that's why so many people say, God, I feel like I'm still a teenager. I feel like I'm still young. It's like, you're always on time for you. Yes. But the problem that we have in this incarnation is that, like, I was a model. Literally, from the first day I started modeling when I was 15, I kid you not, every single person that spoke to me was like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? Because this is a very short-lived career and it'll be over in a few years. And I was like still modeling in my mid-30s. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, great. I've just wasted like decades panicking and worrying and going, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And I could have just been in it fully, really enjoying the experience instead of freaking out and going to college 5,000 times. And then finishing courses and going, yeah, no, that's not for me. Yeah, no, that's not for me. Yeah. Yes. And you know what? I found my way, not the way everybody else did. I went to UCLA in my late 30s. I didn't follow the path that I have never followed the path everyone else took. Like, I mean, never. If you told me to go left, I'd go right just because you told me to go left.
Yeah.
My God, you'd say, that's just who I am. And so I think our pain and suffering comes from, I'm not far enough along yet. My friends are getting married. My friends are having kids. This is happening. That's happening. But you are on your timeline, your own divine timeline. And so until we can learn to trust that, we're always going to struggle and suffer. It's like, I know in my heart, I was meant to rear my son on my own for 13 years and have this experience. He obviously wanted to come in and have the experience of having no father. Does that mean that I'm destined to be alone on my own? No, but I've let go of this grasping of, I need to have a partner or I need to be in relationship. It's like, I am so freaking blissfully happy in my life right now. If somebody comes along and adds value to that and is meant to be in my life, I'm so open to everything. But when James was super young, I was the only single mother. and everybody was married, all my friends. I had gone back to live in my hometown, including all my sisters, like living in the married kids. And then I was this odd one out. And I felt that people judged me, but I was judging myself. So let's go back to the mirror. I was really heavily judging myself. And, I thought, oh, I'll meet someone in the next year and a half, and then I'll be able to give him the perfect family and growing up and blah, blah, blah. And then I reached out to his father because that was the right thing to do and the right thing to do, the right thing to do, the right thing to do. Jesus, no wonder I had a nervous breakdown and ended up with horrific postpartum depression, suicidal ideation, because I literally drove myself insane trying to fit into a world that's insane.
Yeah. Yes.
Trying to fit into a world where people are so disconnected and so unhappy. And the route to happiness is doing what everyone else does. I don't think so. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the worst mental health epidemic ever seen in human history. Like, if the way we are living was the path to happiness, people wouldn't be so miserable. Mm-hmm. So maybe your path is not doing what everybody else is doing. Yeah. Maybe you are exactly on time for your spirit, for your soul. And what if we learn to trust that? What would that look like? What would that look like if, like, I'm 46 in age, but am I? I don't feel like I'm 46. So to me, I'm like, I know loads of people who started businesses in their 50s who became really successful. I know I met a woman, an amazing woman, a few weeks ago at an art exhibition who said her children were grown up. She's in her late 70s. And she sat down one day and she had never written a word in her life. And she's written like 10 different books under an alias, a different name. Like, God brings these people onto your path when you're open and ready to show you that there's not one way. There's so many different ways. And when we learn to go inwards and go, what if I just started to have fun? What if I just started to enjoy my life? What if I just started to treat every day as a gift? What if I started there? Because in my journal, I have a journal called Change Your Day, the 5-minute way. And there's a question in the evening questions. And when you get to the bottom, it's something that made me smile. And the amount of people that reach out to me and say, every time I get to that question, I realize that I don't smile. Makes me really sad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is living if we're not loving and happy and doing things that make us feel alive? And I speak from experience. God, I'm very emotional today. I just had one of these very emotional days. And I always say my emotions love coming out because they were suppressed for so long.
Yeah.
Anytime they can get a chance to come up, they're like,
oh, yay, let's move the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I might have had fun and disco and drinking and drugging and everything, but like actually enjoying the simple things in life. Like, I took part in our local parade in our little town at the weekend. And I was in a coffee shop yesterday and this woman came over and she said, were you in the parade on Saturday? And I said, I was in the parade. And she goes, you made my day. You were loving every second of it. And I said, do you know what? I was loving every second of that. Like, something I thought until the moment I was in the parade that I would never enjoy, never want to be a part of. I'm like, really? Be in the local parade? Stop, will you? I signed up for Christmas before it was even done. I was like, oh my God, we're doing Christmas. Like, we're going to go real big for Christmas. Like, Christmas is going to be amazing. Like, we're going to be parade queens. Like, it's going to be, and like, try something new. Sometimes things that you don't think will make you come alive will, like, start living. And I didn't for so long. So I talk from personal experience. I talk from somebody who desperately wanted to fit in. My whole life became around having the right boyfriend, being in a billboard in Times Square, trying to please my agency, desperately trying to get my mom to see me the way I wanted her to see me, getting my sisters to love me, getting my friends to like me and trying to fit in. It is exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
And soul destroying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's burnout central. You will never be lifted up and filled up and fulfilled on that path. It just doesn't happen that way.
So true. So true. So for someone who's like Okay, I hear you. I want to do something with that. What is like a mindfulness exercise that they could do today? Or maybe it's a breathwork exercise or something that if someone's trying to be more embodied, they're trying to bring more happiness, they're just trying to bring in more peace and calm. What is an exercise that they could do right here, right now, to start to bring them back into their peace, their presence, their happiness?
Even before simple exercises, I always say to people, awareness is the greatest agent for change. But
Yeah.
what is your relationship like with your emotions?
Mm.
And sincerely ask yourself that question. Do I, turn away from sadness, grief, the more difficult emotions, loneliness, anger? Do I turn away when they come up? Do I repress them? Do I suppress those aspects of myself? Because you cannot do this work until you learn to invite every single emotion to the table, to the party of your life, because each and every one of your emotions has a really important part to play and has really important information for you about where you are, about what's going on for you. And I was so terrified of feeling my entire life. And that was the most important part of my recovery in all areas, was learning to get uncomfortable, learning to get really uncomfortable and turning towards my anger and my grief and my despair. And I have had so many times where I've wanted to check out, so many times where people have talked me off the edge, so many times tried to take my life, and just thought of very many different ways to do it. And I remember I had this incredible mentor. She was my alchemy teacher. And one of the times where I said to her, I don't want to be here anymore. Other people would go, oh no, you do want to be here. You really want to be here, blah, 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 blah. And she said to me, I get that. I hear you. I understand why you don't want to be here anymore. With what you're moving through right now, I wouldn't want to be here either. So can you do something for me? I said, yeah. And I had suddenly felt relaxed because she wasn't panicking and telling me what to do. Said, can you just stay till tomorrow? That's all, just till tomorrow. And I was like, okay, I'll stay till tomorrow. I didn't want to stay till tomorrow, but it was just one more day. And she said, and just today, I want you to turn towards that part of yourself before you leave. I want you to turn to that part of yourself. And I want you to say thank you. And we did this exercise on the phone, and I cried. And that cry where you're sobbing and heaving and shaking.
Yes.
And turning to that part of me and loving the part of me that was so scared, so terrified. And it was the most incredible moment of my life, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been so scared of this. And this is me. It's not someone else or something else. It's a part of me, and then because of that breath work, like I'm such a huge fan of breathing long, slow, deep breaths all the time, like in the car, sitting at traffic lights, like in for 2, out for 4, in for 3, out for 6, in for 4, out for 8. And until I get comfortable with in for 4, out for 8, I know I'm still wound up and activated.
Yeah.
And so that's my beautiful practice I have for myself. And these things I do daily, like every day, because that's what it takes. I know what it's like to live in hell, and I don't want to go back ever. And so, it's worth getting to know yourself at that level, because the relationship that you have with yourself is the only one that you have from birth to death. It's the only one. Like everyone else comes and goes. You're born into a family, your parents, you grow up, you leave, you might meet a partner, you might have kids, they're going to grow up. The only constant is you and you. And so that relationship with you is so sacred and so important and so selfless, actually, because you can't really give the best of you to anyone else if you don't give the best of you to yourself, and really begin to love yourself, to love all of who you are. The ugly parts, they're the most important parts to love. The parts of you that come up that you're like, ooh, ow, that's ugly. Like when we start to really love those parts of ourselves, we can transform our lives on a whole different level. like the mental health epidemic is one of, we live in a world where people are afraid to feel. I mean, look at cancel culture. God
Yes.
forbid you spoke your truth. God
Yes.
forbid we show our feelings. I was doing a talk a couple of days ago, and one of the speakers was so incredibly heartfelt. And when she spoke, the entire room was so moved. People had tears streaming out of their eyes, not because they were sad, but because she touched them at such a deep level. And it was really interesting that she came up afterwards and she said, like, I hate that I do that. You know, I don't like that. I wish I could talk without doing that. I'm like, wow, that's such a gift that you can access that deep connection with others and help them connect deeply with their own hearts at that level. Like, that's what we need to do as human beings. We have this deep desire and craving for connection, but it's also the one thing we fear. We're terrified of being seen. What if someone sees me, like, really for who I am? You know, what if they don't like who I am? So I'm just going to put back on my mask and I'm just going to pretend and I'm just going to keep going. But what if we just let our masks go? Because, like, everything's energetic anyway. And so 70% of our communication is energetic. So you can put on whatever mask you want, but people are reading your frequency.
Yes.
So it's futile. It is such a waste of your time and energy. Because when you don't get on with someone and you don't vibe with them, that's real. You know, listen to that.
Yes.
And so I would say to people, your breath is your superpower, which I know you know, Christina, on a really deep level. Your breath literally is your spirit moving through you. Connect with your breath to connect with yourself and become curious. Become lighter and curious with yourself. If you have an interaction with somebody that's not so nice, or you said things, it's like, wow, that's interesting. Like, let me take a step back. What happened there? Where is that emotion in my body? Like, what's going on for me right now? Like, stop and listen to your body. Does that feel like it's been there for a long time? Is it hardened? Does it feel like it's moving through? Like, start really asking a lot of questions and get to know yourself at that level, because your body is always giving you feedback.
Yes.
And so if you start to get quiet and listen and be guided from there, instead of calling 15 people and asking for their advice.
So true. So true.
Who don't live in your life and
Yeah.
really don't know what's. I always say to my clients, people will rarely give you advice based on what's best for you. They will generally give you advice based on what they would do. Very different.
Exactly. That's so true. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Like, and can I just say, shout out to that mentor, like that space that she held for you, the way that she guided you in. I mean, God bless that woman. You're like, wow, of like, you know, just stay here for just a day. Like,
you have to be so, well, first of all, integrated. And she is an alchemy teacher and she is an incredible alchemist.
yes.
But you have to be so integrated with zero fear in your body to be able to hold space for someone like that. She has zero fear. She was like, I get why you want to go. Like, I get, and I was like, oh, and I felt, for the first time, I felt seen. That's what it was. I was like, someone sees me. My whole life. Like, she's like, I get it. And I just went, and now I didn't feel like I had to fight ever. And I just remember her saying, I get it. I wouldn't want to be here either if I was going through what you're going through. It's hard. Can you do me? Can you just stay for a day? Just that. Can you do that for me? Just one day. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I will, that's really was my initiation into understanding what love is. Didn't really understand what love was. Up until that point, I had studied it. I had thought I did. And then it was like me realizing that every freaking way I had of expressing love was conditional.
Oh, yeah.
You do this for me, I'll do this for you. I do this for her. And if I do this, and if I open up my heart to you, then you have to do. Oh gosh, it's very tiring.
It is.
And this is the first time I got to witness love dissolving the greatest fears inside of me, which were huge. Like, they wanted to take me out. They were that big, you know. And the power of love in coming in and making that part of me feel safe,
Mhm.
I never looked back. I was like, I mean, it took me months of integration and deep work with her, but I was always
Mhm.
like, that's why I do have such a big problem with how we treat mental health.
Mhm. Yeah,
I do.
me too.
Because people are crying out to be seen, to be heard,
Mhm.
to be validated.
Mhm.
Just see me for who I am,
Mhm.
you know, and it's like that in and of itself generally tends to dissolve a lot of the pain that's inside somebody,
It's
you
so
know.
true. Oh, it's so true. Mm. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I feel like I'm like, wow, I could talk to you for like 3 more hours, which we will. But for those that are like, oh, I just want more of Alison, I want to tune into her energy. Where can they find you? Where are you hanging out?
Yeah. So on my website, AlisonCanavan.com, and I have a monthly membership that people can join. It's only $33 a month. We do meditations. We have these kind of conversations. And there's lots of stuff in there, breathwork, coaching. I do one-to-one. And then Instagram is where I'm most active on social media. I'm not amazing in social media anymore, but Instagram, Alison Canavan Wellness, you will find me there.
Mm.
Yeah, it was just so incredible to speak with you today. Like your energy is, I'm just sitting here. I'm going to be drinking in your medicine for the rest of the day. Thank you.
I'm so grateful. I feel exactly the same. I mean, I was like, just mind blown. I mean, you're saying all these things. I'm like, I feel so seen as you're speaking. You know, it's like so much of what you said. I was like, me too. And how beautiful that as we share our story, I guarantee the people that are listening in, that woman, that man that's listening in right now is like me freaking too. And it just makes it so much less scary to know that someone else has gone through it and that there is
Mm,
another side and
yeah.
that we can hold space for each other while we're doing it. I mean, what a gift. So,
And I have never told that story before. It's
mm,
so interesting. And so thank you for creating this space
mhm.
of safety because yeah, and you know, we just trust that that story is meant to be told for whatever reason. For
100%.
whoever to receive it. But like, know that, you know, it's funny. I just did a talk recently and the same question came up that you asked was, is it too late for me? And if that's really the only message you get from today, it's never too late. It's never, ever, ever too late to
Mhm.
turn it around. Like I have been so broke on my own. When James was born, I had $50 and like euros in my bank account, and I was absolutely terrified. Like, you can always turn it around. Always, always, you know?
Mm. I got full body chills for you, by the way, when you said, I've never told that story before. I'm positive. I know that the person that's listening in that was meant to receive it is here listening to it right now.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah,
turning
me too.
for that. So, for those that are tuning in, we're just sending you so much light and love. Reach out to us. We're here for you in any way, shape, or form. And we cannot wait to join you here very soon next week. Thank you.